Tonight we're going to talk about the doors of perception and how our senses, our sensory experience can influence the healing process. A little background on that. Ayurveda is a consciousness-based medicine, which means that all the material expressions that we've been learning about, now we've been learning about Vata, Pitta, Kapha, everything that we do in terms of the physical body, the understanding of that is consciousness-based, because the physical body is just the expression of consciousness. The physical body is just a bundle of consciousness. And what is consciousness? It's energy and information which is self-referral. Therefore, it's intelligence. And so, one of the things that I hope will happen with you, because it happened with me as I started to explore this, is that after a while, you don't even mentally think of the body as physical. Now, you think of the body as this bundle of consciousness, always. Start to look at it, start to think about it, start to examine it in your own awareness as a bundle of consciousness, which is constantly and ever in dynamic exchange with the universe, which is the ocean of consciousness. And there is this dynamic dance going on between your body and the universe all the time, and it's constantly transforming. Think in your mind that it's infinitely flexible, because consciousness is infinitely flexible. So in your mind, have that idea always that the physical body is not physical. Even though it appears to be physical, it's not physical. It's a bundle of consciousness, and consciousness in its very nature is infinitely flexible. There's a Vedic expression, infinite flexibility is the secret of immortality. Don't forget that. Infinite flexibility in consciousness. And of course, yoga tries to culture that infinite flexibility in the physical body, but ultimately the body is not physical. So think about the infinite flexibility of consciousness. And the physical body just as an expression of that. When I see people, somebody comes up to me and says, "Will you sign this book?" Or, "Hello, how are you?" It's almost automatic with me that I immediately, in my mind, wonder, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, Vata, what combination? It's just automatic. So do that. When I started learning Ayurveda, I used to sit with an Ayurvedic physician on the beach, and everybody that passed by would say, "Okay, now tell me." And and we would just look at people just walking by, and in our minds, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And after a while, he would say, "Okay, now tell me what they're thinking." And you will be able to do that. Just pay attention to that. Because, there's a certain pattern that goes with Vata, a certain pattern that goes with Pitta, a certain pattern that goes with Kapha, a certain kind of bodily movement, there's a certain kind of eye gesture, there's a certain kind of hand movement. But you'll be able to do that. But the first thing is, think that the body is a bundle of consciousness. Then think, when you encounter people, start thinking, what is that consciousness's expression in terms of these three factors that you've learned now about? And remember those three factors basically as movement, as transformation, as structure. Those are the three principles in creation, in all of creation. So, movement, transformation, structure. Whenever movement is exaggerated, that's Vata is expressing itself. Whenever there's transformation, that's Pitta expressing itself. And then there's structure, stability, that's Kapha expressing itself. Those are the three principles through which consciousness operates. And third, when you look at people, and it becomes habit after a while, just go beyond what you're seeing. First you're seeing their physical body, then you're seeing their movements, their gestures, their speech. But there's a soul over there. Look at that. Feel the presence of the soul and the spirit, the animating life force. Hear somebody speaking to you, ask yourself, who's speaking to me? Now, this is just the instrument of speech. This vocal cord is just the instrument of speech. These hand gestures are instruments. There's a presence there. There's a spirit there. So go look for it. Feel it. You start connecting with that. Also, when you look at someone, when you interact with someone, and I've started doing this only recently myself, but I'm telling you, it's very important to do because it really connects you to other people. Is as soon as you encounter someone or if you're having an interaction with someone, deep inside your own self, just say, there's a soul there, there's a spirit there, there's a spirit here, and we are both equal. There's no one who's superior, there's no one who's inferior. On the level of spirit, we are coming as equals. And if you just acknowledge that inside you, you'll connect with that soul. You'll connect with that soul. Okay, so we started all our lives, this present life that we have, we all started off as a little speck of information on DNA. That's what the material expression of soul is. It comes into this physical, manifest world as a speck of information that has this little DNA in it. And then people start adding food to it, and then suddenly we have this physical body that goes around doing things, signing books and lectures and giving speeches. Essentially, consciousness manifests as a speck of information on DNA, and that speck of information keeps transforming itself. We are a dynamic bundle of information that's continuously and ever in transformation. And that transformation is brought about through experience. So, whatever is happening in our body is that original speck of information that was the soul's way of coming here with its karma, its memories, and its desires. And then that transformation starts through experience. And we start to metabolize experience. In medical school we were taught we metabolize food. Well, that's not the only thing we metabolize. We metabolize experience. Food is one of the experiences that we metabolize. And our physical body is nothing other than the metabolic end product of experiences. And there's a Vedic expression also for that. It says, if you want to know what your experiences were like in the past, then you can examine your body now. And if you want to know what your body will look like in the future, then you can examine your experiences now. You want to change your body, change your experience of life. You want to change the outcome of an illness, change experience. It's very important to understand that. We don't do that when we treat people. We look at the disease and then we treat the disease. We interfere with the mechanism of the disease. But we never say to ourselves, this disease came about as a result of experiences that were metabolized into this unhealthy expression. So if we want to reverse this illness, and then the whole concept of reversal doesn't even exist in modern medicine until recently, and we'll talk about heart disease, where there's for the first time some good insight that heart disease, and I'm talking about coronary artery disease, but coronary artery disease is now proven to be reversible. And just that has started a whole new kind of paradigm, in a sense, in modern medicine, not in Ayurveda. Ayurveda holds that diseases are reversible. Because if there's a mechanism for it, then there's a mechanism in the reverse direction for it. Everything has its opposite. One of our principles of spirit. For everything that exists, there's the opposite also. So there is reversibility of disease into, in the disease itself is the potentiality for complete balance and health. But that concept only recently appeared in Western medicine when people started documenting through angiography that coronary artery disease is reversible, and we will be talking about that. But what is even more important is that paradigm now is saying to us, well, if coronary artery disease is reversible, why not rheumatoid arthritis? Why not cancer? Why not multiple sclerosis? There's a mechanism, there should be a mechanism in the reverse direction. So that's a great breakthrough, just the fact that people have documented that coronary artery disease is reversible. Consciousness being a field of infinite flexibility, that for everything that exists and has a mechanism, there's a mechanism in the reverse direction. Start thinking like that. And what that mechanism is, it has to do with how we metabolize our experiences. And how do we, therefore, the next question is, how do we get experience? And in the physical world, of course, there are three levels of experience. There are experiences in the flesh, in the material body, the experiences in the world of emotion, and then there are experiences in the world of spirit. So in order to be truly holistic, we need to include all these three levels. Actually, we need to include 4 levels. The environment, the physical body, the subtle body, and the causal body. And we discussed these levels. So first of all, the environment has to be healing. And what's the one thing you think that would be the most dangerous experience that would interfere with healing? Fear. What's the one thing that you think would be the most conducive to healing? Love. So those are the opposites, right? The opposite of fear is not hate. Hate is a desperate cry for love, actually. Every act of violence and every expression of hate is a desperate cry for love. The opposite of love is fear. Now, what happens when you go to a hospital? What's the first experience you have? You feel afraid, yes. I mean, this is the tragedy that we have created environments where people are supposed to go to get healed, and the first experience they have as soon as they enter is fear. I mean, the hospital next to a prison is the most fearful place. Literally. And that's unfortunate that we have created that experience. It's not a healing environment. It's not a healing environment. You know, everything from simple things like the way the beepers work, to the way the code 99s work, the code red works, the way the sirens work, the uniforms, the machines, everything creates intimidation. So if any of you who's ever going to be practicing, the first thing you have to do is you have to create an environment that is nurturing, that is nourishing, that gives a person the feeling that there is the energy of love here, real energy of love. So when you're encountering a patient and you're going to do body work on them, in your mind, just that little attitude that I am with the physical expression of divinity here, that will just create a quality in the environment that will take away the fear. Because most of our experiences are actually non-verbal. You don't have to say anything to a person. You remember the famous expression of Emerson? He says, "Who you are shouts so loudly in my ears, I cannot hear what you're saying." You don't have to say anything. If that's the inner attitude, it'll be reflected in the way you touch the patient, in the way you interact with the patient, in the way you massage, in the way you do anything. So the first ingredient is creating that healing environment. The second thing is that all our experiences in the physical body are through our senses. So sensory stimulus is traditionally seen in Ayurveda as the key to healing. We approach the inner pharmacy through the senses. The senses are the gateway to the inner pharmacy. Now, Ayurveda has always held that there are two kinds of pharmacies in the universe. One is our physical body, which is a pharmacy by itself. And then the second pharmacy is the world of plants. The world of plants, and to some extent the world of minerals. Because the world of plants is also the physical body of spirit. And that's why all the herbal pharmacopoeia of Ayurveda, which you'll hear a lot about, is very profound. There's at least over 1,000 different herbal preparations with very clear, distinctive effects on the human body. And you'll learn about this. At least you'll get a good introduction to it. Modern science is showing that the human body creates homeostasis or healing. We have a healing system in us, actually through powerful endogenous pharmacological products. So the human body makes some of the most significant wonder drugs that are available today. The so-called best drugs, the most effective, powerful drugs that modern medicine makes are called biologicals. And these biologicals are things like interferon, interleukins, other immunomodulators. So these are powerful anti-cancer drugs. The body makes imipramine, which is an antidepressant. The body makes all kinds of neuropeptides, which are very powerful drugs, literally. H2 receptor blockers, you name it, the human body can make it. It makes it at the right time when we are in the state of balance, makes it at the right time, in the right dose. There are no side effects, and all the instructions are contained in the packaging. So the body has evolved over literally millions of years to this bundle of consciousness with formidable intelligence. In fact, the best drugs that the pharmaceutical industry is now getting a handle on, including receptor blockers, are made by the human body. And how does the body make them? In response to sensory stimulation. In response to stimulation through the five senses. It makes them in response to what's going on in our inner world of thought and feeling and emotion and desire and memory. That's a whole different area. But at this moment, I'm only talking about the physical body and the pharmacy in the physical body that responds to sensory stimulation. True healing can only happen when there's perfect alignment of elements and forces in the human body with elements and forces in the cosmic body. When there is perfect alignment, or we might say harmonious interaction of elements and forces in the physical body with the cosmic body. And this alignment, atonement, at-one-ment, coherence, entrainment is what we are trying to achieve whenever we are bringing about the healing process. Because when we are totally tuned in to the cosmic rhythm, if you will, then the intelligence of nature flows through us with spontaneous and effortless ease. That's what we want, this effortless spontaneity of nature's intelligence flowing through our physical body. So one of the first and most important things is also understanding of biological rhythms. We'll have a whole lecture on that, and we'll discuss biological rhythms and restoration of biological rhythms. But that is an important ingredient. The rhythms of the cosmos and the rhythms of the microcosm must be in alignment with each other. It's very important in treating cancer, and very important in treating actually any chronic illness. So through sensory experience, that's also what we're trying to achieve. This restoration of biological rhythm. And this process, as I said, there are many names for it: attunement, coherence, entrainment. Entrainment is a word that's frequently used, and entrainment, or this tendency for physical bodies to tune in with other physical bodies, is a well-known phenomenon in nature. Because one of the principles, again, of spirit, I mentioned one, everything contains its opposite, but there's another principle from last night: everything is vibration. And vibration tends to tune in to similar vibration. And this quality is called resonance. So any object in the universe, any object, has a certain vibration at which it resonates. And it begins first through sound. Because sound is vibration. Right now, the sound I'm producing is the vibration of breath, and therefore the vibration of atmosphere. In fact, there are references to the effect of sound in all the religious and spiritual traditions of the world. In the New Testament, you will read the phrase where the Roman centurion says to Christ, he says, "Lord, I'm not worthy that thou should come under my roof, but say the words, speak the sound, and my soul shall be healed." And of course, in the Gospel of John, first there was the Word was made into flesh. In Vedic literature, Nada Brahman, which says Brahman creates through sound, through vibration. And in fact, there's a reference in the New Testament, according to Luke, where the mother of John the Baptist, when she sees the Virgin Mary and she's pregnant with John the Baptist, she says, "The babe in my womb leaped with joy when it heard the sound of your voice." We begin to respond to sound even before we are born, and we respond to the sounds of the mother's body, what she hears, all the sounds she makes, what she speaks, the sounds in the environment. But even after we are born, we are constantly influenced by sound. In fact, the whole basis of Ayurveda is that we start out as pure consciousness, which is a field of infinite possibilities, which is pure silence. And then that silence, the pure consciousness, which is the field of infinite possibilities, silence, it interacts with its own self. And as it interacts with its own self, it begins to vibrate. And when it begins to vibrate, it produces sound. And sound, therefore, is the way consciousness becomes conscious, or intelligence becomes intelligent. And a thought is nothing other than a sound in your consciousness. It's a vibration in that silence. And the thought is the final expression of what is called primordial sound, the first elemental vibrations in consciousness. And these elemental vibrations in consciousness are universal. They are not just human. They are the origins of language. So there are scientists that are called paleolinguistic anthropologists who study the origins of language. And paleolinguistic anthropologists inform us that as we look at the origins of language, no matter what the language is, Eastern, French, English, Latin, Sanskrit, Indo-Aryan languages, Chinese, as we start to go to their roots, we find the same sounds. These are the sounds of nature. Nature speaks in order to create. So first there was the Word was made into flesh, is literal. Language is not a way of describing things. Language is a way of creating things. You create through language. You do not describe. You create through language. In fact, there is no thing that exists that doesn't have a word. If it doesn't have a word, it's not part of your experience. Even if it exists, if there's no word for it, it will not be part of your perceptual experience. Language creates. Remember that. So these sounds, universal sounds, are called primordial sounds. Primordial sounds have been used traditionally for healing in all the cultures of the world to bring about entrainment, remove the dissonant vibrations from the body and introduce the vibratory frequencies that bring about entrainment. And there are many kinds of primordial sounds. The first kind of primordial sound is the sound of the alphabet itself. The alphabet, which is universal if you sound it out, whether it doesn't matter if you sound out the alphabet in English or in Greek or in Latin or in Hindi or in Sanskrit, the sound of the alphabet is the same. In fact, the word for the sounds of the alphabet in Sanskrit is matrika, which means the mother of language. And there are two categories of primordial sounds in language, the vowels and the consonants. And the vowels are, of course, A, E, I, O, U in English. In Sanskrit, A, E, E, U, U, A, I, O, Aha. You don't have to remember that. Just remember A, E, I, O, U. So right now I want to take you through a couple of little techniques that you can incorporate into your healing repertoire. Okay, and these have to do with using the sounds of the alphabet. The first sound is Ah. Okay, take a deep breath, and as you exhale, make the sound Ah. Okay, now we'll do it once again. This time we'll make it really loudly, and we'll keep saying it till we run out of breath. By the way, this is a great pranayama. It's great breathing exercise too. So take a deep breath again, and this time as you're making it, close your eyes and feel your body. Feel the vibrations. Introduce the sound into your body, the vibration into your body. Okay, now this time what we're going to do is, as we make the sound, we close the eyes, we'll mentally have attention on some part of the body. And we'll have the intention for healing. Now, this is very subtle. What I mean, attention on some part of the body is just very effortlessly put your attention on that part of the body. It's not a concentration. Okay? Wiggle your toes, please. That's attention and intention, right there. As soon as you did that, your attention went to your toes, and then you had the intention, wiggling. So it's so simple that it hardly needs explanation. You don't think, heal, 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 okay? Because that's too mental. Too mental. We want to work from the level of spirit. So this time when you make the sound, just put your attention on some part of the body where you want healing to occur. And then don't think healing, healing, healing. The attention is there and the intention is implied, okay? The more subtle, the better. Just like when you wiggle your toes, you don't say wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Okay? You just do it. You have the intention. So this time, put your attention on some part of your body that you want healing to occur. And if you can't decide where to do that because you're already healed, put it on your heart. We all need some emotional healing. Okay, this is a great place to put your attention on, because the heart is not just a pump, it's the seat of emotions as well. So choose a spot in your body, and this time close your eyes and make that sound with the attention and intention going to that part of the body. Okay, now the same thing, whichever part you chose, choose that same part again. Let's say you directed the sound to your heart, or if you have a neck spasm and you directed it there, or whatever, you have an ulcer, you directed it to your stomach. Stay with that, and this time we'll do the same process with the sound A, okay? Instead of saying ah, we'll say A. And now we'll use the sound of the letter E. Again, take a deep breath. And now we'll use the sound of the letter O. And remember, each time we're directing it to that same part of the body with the attention and intention for healing and transformation. Now, the sound of the letter U. Okay, what I'd like you to do is, for the next few days, when you're in the bathroom or taking a walk, try these 5 sounds: A, E, O, U. And keep directing them to one part and then another part and then another part. And in a few days, decide which one of these 5 sounds, A, E, O, U, feels good inside your body. Which one of these creates a feeling of energy? Which one of these creates a vibration where you direct it? You know, if you're directing it to your solar plexus, do you feel some sensation there? Do you feel some vibration? If you direct it to your heart, do you feel some resonance there? Do you feel some vibration there? So try each one of these and see which one feels more energizing, which one is easy to direct, which one creates sensation, vibration, and then choose that, adopt it, make it your personal primordial sound of the alphabet. And then practice with that, directing it to different parts of the body with the intention of healing. And once you've done that for a few days, then no longer make the sound. Close your eyes and hear the sound in your consciousness, in the subtle body. So now let's do that for a moment. What we'll do is, we'll take these same sounds and just close your eyes, and when I say start, then start with the sound ah and direct it to some part of your body, hearing it now. So again, close your eyes and listen to the sound ah, the way we were doing it, and direct it to some part of your body. And now do that with A. And with E. and with O. And with U. Okay, please open your eyes. So, within a few days or a few weeks, what you should be able to experience is that you can sit down any time during the day, and for a minute or 2 minutes you can take one of these sounds. Don't try all of them. You need to adopt one and become just proficient at using that one. So out of these 5, just use one. Then start mentally directing the sound to different parts of the body with that attention and intention of healing. So let's say your heart is speeding up and you want to slow it down, as in somebody who has tachycardia. You can actually break an arrhythmia with this just by doing this. So one of the things that you can combine it with is the experience of smell. This process is called neuro-associative conditioning. You train your nervous system to associate one sensory experience with another sensory experience. I'll discuss how smell works in a few minutes. But for now, if you, let's say, combine a smell with the ability to mentally direct a sound, and how do you do that? Well, let's say you're directing the sound to your heart mentally, okay? And you want to slow it down. I'm just using that right now as the example. And what you would want to do is direct mentally the sound to your heart, and at the same time you would take a vata balancing smell, because speeding up of the heart is a vata problem, right? It's too much movement. You would take a vata balancing smell and you would smell it as you're mentally directing that sound. And after a while, what would happen is your limbic system will, every time it smells that, it would automatically associate with that sound and automatically associate it with the intention of slowing the heart rate down. So after a while, you wouldn't even have to think the whole process. You could take just the smell and smell it, and you'd slow the heart rate down. Or let's say the problem is an ulcer, you do the same thing. You're directing the sound there, whatever the sound is, ooh. You're directing the sound there mentally, but at the same time you're smelling something with an ulcer. What kind of a problem is an ulcer? Pitta. So you're taking a cooling smell, which is pitta balancing at the same time. So after a while, then every time you smell that, the ulcer will cool down, etc., etc. This is called neuro-associative conditioning. Okay, so that's how we use the sounds of the vowels. And remember, choose one, not all. Then there are other sounds which are not the vowels, the consonants, which spontaneously tend to localize in different parts of the body. And we'll just take a few examples of them. The vowel sounds are the most useful. The reason being, you can easily direct them anywhere in the body. The non-vowels are not so useful because they have a tendency to localize. So let's go over some of them, the most useful ones. The first sound is the sound of the letter N or N. So your tongue is touching the back of your teeth, and you take a deep breath and you exhale, making this sound. If you do it right, you should feel a vibration in your mastoid process. Take your index finger, put it on your mastoid as you do it, and see if you can feel the vibration there. Can you feel the vibration there? Okay, this sound is traditionally directed to this area. It improves bone conduction. One of the problems as we grow older is that we don't hear as well. So this is very good sound for improving your bone conduction and hearing. It's also very good if you have tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears. It's also good if you have vertigo. The origin of the vertigo is some imbalance in the inner ear. Okay, because it tends to align those three little bones that are responsible for bone conduction. The sound of the letter M, ma. You should feel the vibration in your sinuses. It improves, or it is good for those people who tend to have periodic congestion of the sinuses, kapha problems in the sinuses. Direct the sound here. The sound of ka, ga, gha, comes directly from the vocal cords. So let's try it. Ka, ga, gha, ka, ga, gha, ka, ga, gha. Now, one of the problems, again, as we grow older, one of the things that happens is that our vocal cords lose their elasticity. They're not so resilient anymore. But if you practice this sound, you'll keep the resilience here. And actually, I've taught this sound to a lot of professional singers. And they practice it every day. It is very good to keep your voice young, resonant, keep the resilience of the vocal cords. Actually, every sound of the alphabet has a localized expression in the body. One of them is very useful, and that is the sound of the letter H, also known as in Sanskrit called Mahaprana, which means big breath. You know how people clean their glasses sometimes? So with your mouth open, make that sound. Again, take a deep breath with your mouth open. Okay, now close your mouth and breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the nose with the intention of producing that sound. You just have to squeeze the back of your throat a little bit. Okay, now let me tell you something very interesting about this sound. It has some amazing physiological effects. First of all, if you have someone practice this breathing, which is called Ujjayi breathing, making the sound, and at the same time have them have their hands in this position. This is a classic mudra. Mudra is a fixed position of the hands. So your 3 fingers here are extended, and your forefinger and your thumb are opposing each other like this. Okay, so you're sitting on a chair, you put your hands on your lap, and you practice Ujjayi breathing. And if I have you behind a fluoroscope is an X-ray machine, and I'm watching your breathing, what I'll notice is that your breathing is predominantly diaphragmatic. In fact, you can't do this mudra and breathe this way without moving your diaphragm very significantly. Try it. It just, when you breathe in, your stomach goes out because the diaphragm goes down. When you breathe out, the diaphragm goes up and the stomach goes in. It is the way to use diaphragmatic breathing. So, one of the nerves that comes to the diaphragm is called the vagus nerve, which also goes to the heart. And when you do this breathing, the vagus nerve gets stimulated and your heart starts to slow down. This is one of the most effective ways of lowering blood pressure, of slowing the heart rate. It's better than a beta blocker, literally. And I'll tell you some other uses for this in a moment. But this is one of the things that it does. Okay, so it slows down the heart rate, it lowers the blood pressure. Now, over the years, I have personally taught this breathing to athletes, and actually to some Olympic athletes. But one of the things I've done over the years with trainers, professional trainers, is teach this breathing to athletes when they're running or when they're doing some physical exercise. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating. I have marathon runners who have the same heart rate at the end of the run as at the beginning of the run. Because even as they're running, they control their heart rate through this breathing. And what this does is, because it lowers your heart rate, at the same time increasing your breathing capacity, because the diaphragm is moving up and down like this, it also increases your cardiac output. And as a result of that, it increases your coronary blood flow. It is quite amazing, the improvement in athletic performance. You know, for people who could run 5 miles, run 10 miles. And their breathing is slow. Even the end of the run, they're breathing at 18 per minute, 14 to 18 per minute at the end of the run. And their heart rate doesn't go up. Or if it goes up, you know, at maximum heart rate, it'll go up 100, 110, and 2 minutes after the run is over, it'll be back to 70. So it's a great way to increase exercise performance, a great way to increase cardiac output, a great way to lower blood pressure, a great way to increase breathing capacity, therefore to energize yourself, to immediately feel invigorated. Mahaprana, the sound, you should be able to hear the sound as you're doing it. And this sound also can be used to abort an asthmatic attack, a breathing bronchospasm. As soon as you begin to notice that you're having bronchospasm, start practicing Ujjayi breathing. In yoga, it's called the sound of the letter H. Mahaprana is the sound of the letter H. So this is the first category of primordial sounds. The second category of primordial sounds are the sounds of nature. Because remember, even our speech is an expression of primordial sound. Language, in its linguistic, verbally elite expression, is a very late development in evolution. All of nature is full of language. Birds sing. Why? Because that's nature singing in the morning. Crickets make sounds at night. That's nature's sound at night. So any sound in nature, whether it's the sound of a waterfall or a sound that's recurring, like cricket sings at night every day, birds sing in the morning every day, the ocean has its sound throughout the day, a different sound as it goes through the tidal rhythms. These are healing sounds. All sounds of nature are healing sounds because they are primordial. Overtone chanting is using the same sounds of the alphabet but with overtones in it. Tibetans have mastered the overtone chanting, and also Gregorian chanting is sometimes a modified form of overtone chanting. So mantra chanting. Mantras have amazing effects on the physiology. Mantras are not random sounds, and the fact is that there are some initial studies now that show you can take cells out of the body and put them in a test tube. Take some lymphocytes and white cells and put them in a test tube and play mantras to them. And you'll find that they start secreting immunomodulators like interleukin, interferon, etc. Now that's in response to mantra, but cells respond in vitro, in a test tube, to other sounds as well, to music. So if you play music that produces tranquility, and you know, music, of course, is a cultural thing many times. You associate certain experiences, or they create certain experiences to you. So let's say a certain type of music creates in you the experience of tranquility. If I was looking at your white cells in a test tube, I'd find that your white cells make diazepam, which is Valium. You actually transform the music and metabolize it into your body making Valium, which is diazepam in the body is actually an immunomodulator. It tells the immune cell, there's no hurry, take it easy. You can do a good job if you're calm and you're settled. You don't need to be jittery. And when you're jittery, then your immune cells make adrenaline. Even your platelets make adrenaline. And the body's inner intelligence knows what the right amount is, the right dose. If you create music that creates exhilaration, Vivaldi or something, and you feel exhilarated, your body secretes imipramine. Your immune cells secrete an antidepressant. So all sounds get metabolized into physiological responses. Okay, so mantra, chanting, music. In Ayurveda, we have what is called Gandharva Veda music, which is music that will take the seasons into account and take in the body's rhythm. So Vata balancing music, Pitta balancing music, Kapha balancing music. Now we're working with musicians to create the equivalent of Vata, Pitta and Kapha balancing music, which uses Western melodies. So that's sound. Second experience, touch. We want to cover a lot of material, so I'm going to move right into touch. Skin is the biggest pharmacy in the body. The body is a huge pharmacy, but the skin is the biggest pharmacy in the body because it has so much surface area. And the skin is derived from the same germ layer as the brain. It's called the neuroectoderm. So all the different neuropeptides that are found in the brain, which are also, the physical expression of our emotions, the same neuropeptides are also found in the skin. And some of the more significant neuropeptides, I've already mentioned a couple, imipramine, interleukins, interferons. There's a neuropeptide found in the skin which is very interesting. It's called vasoactive intestinal polypeptide, VIP. Very important peptide. The reason it's called vasoactive intestinal polypeptide is that originally it was discovered in the intestine. But it's actually found in the skin, it's also found in the brain. Now, VIP happens to be the most potent vasodilator known biologically. A vasodilator is something that opens up blood vessels. And VIP particularly improves coronary blood flow. There are very few studies on this, but they're very exciting. There is one study that shows that if you give somebody a massage with sesame oil, then the level of VIP increases about 3 to 5-fold in your blood and remains elevated for up to 3 weeks after a massage. And if you do a PET scan on someone, a PET scan is a positron emission tomography of the heart, immediately following an Ayurvedic massage, then as the VIP goes up, the coronary blood flow also increases, and about 15 to 25% increase in blood flow to the heart after an Ayurvedic massage. Simultaneously, the VIP level is going up. Now imagine you had a drug that did that and you didn't use it after a heart attack, you would probably be sued for malpractice. So as we gather more data, my hope is that in every coronary care unit, people will be getting massages. We do more for them than a lot of the drugs that we use. Increases blood flow. Now there's another very interesting thing that has been found by Candice Pert, who is a molecular biologist and a neuroendocrinologist. She was the chief of brain chemistry at one time at the NIH, till she made the following discovery. And the discovery was that VIP occupies the same receptor site on T cells as HIV. When a virus or anything needs to get inside a cell, it first has to go through a receptor on the cell wall. Just like if you want to enter a room that's locked, you need a key to open the door. So think of the peptide as a key and the lock as the receptor. You open the door, then you can get into the room. Now that's how HIV gets inside the cell, or that's how any peptide works. Now it so happens that VIP occupies the same receptor site as HIV. So theoretically, if there's a lot of VIP floating in your system, occupying all these receptor sites, then HIV cannot get inside the cell. And if it can't get inside the cell in vitro, in the test tube, it has a lifespan only for about 3 hours. Now, when Candice made this discovery, she got so excited that she left the NIH because she thought, with the rigmarole and the bureaucracy of the government, take her years and years to do what she wanted to. She wanted to understand more about the dynamics of peptides and how they occupy receptor sites, particularly in HIV disease. And she was ultimately able to not only identify this peptide, VIP, synthesize it, and she called it peptide T, is her name for it, because it occupies T cells, receptor sites. And in fact, right now, even as we speak, there are trials going on in Europe with peptide T as the next generation of drugs that will be used for treating HIV. And there are certain trials already that show that improves dementia, improves the neuropathy that's associated with HIV, improves many, many things. And these are very preliminary trials. The remarkable thing is it's a whole new concept. Every other treatment of HIV has been about killing the virus. And whenever you use a chemotherapeutic agent, you kill the virus, of course, but you also kill normal cells. What this is doing is just telling the virus, I'm not going to let you in. That's all. And therefore, it's totally free of side effects. Totally free. But whilst all that is happening, I think just looking at this data, it's very important that everybody who has HIV infection or HIV, they should be getting a massage every day. They should be giving themselves a massage every day. Then there are, of course, antidepressants secreted. That's why you feel good after a massage. I think anybody with any chronic illness, cancer, heart disease, arthritis, has immense benefit from massage because of the stimulation of this endogenous pharmacy that we've been speaking about. Any patient with any chronic illness, there's huge benefits from massage, and only now beginning to understand how that massage is given, why sesame oil, what are the herbs used. This is part of another discussion which you will get, because the herbs that are used, there are some powerful antioxidant properties in these. They get absorbed into the system. They're free radical scavengers. They get rid of the toxins. So there's many mechanisms by which massage works. There's also the secretion of growth factors and growth hormone through massage. Growth hormone in children makes the children grow. But in adults, growth hormone is an anabolic hormone which has anti-aging effects. So people who get massage regularly or give themselves massage every day, their biological age can be measured. And you'll definitely see a difference. Even after 1 week of panchakarma, you'll see a difference in biological markers of aging. One of the reasons is there's secretion of growth factors and anabolic hormones in the system. So those are the benefits of the second experience, touch. Okay, I want to move on to the third experience, which is the experience of sight, color, vision. First of all, what's a chakra? How do you explain a chakra to anyone? The best way to explain it in scientific terms is it's the junction point where energy and matter come together in very high concentration. Energy and matter and consciousness, the three things we spoke about: information, energy, and matter come together. Of course, in every part of the body there's this link between information, energy, and matter. But it so happens that in the chakras, this link is much more concentrated. And in Vedic theory, chakras, amongst other things that they do, they control biological activities. So the root chakra, if it's a problem with the root chakra, then the problems are with elimination, bowels, constipation, irritable bowel, things like that. If there's a problem with the second chakra, the place where Freud got stuck, that place, then you have reproductive problems, problems with infertility, impotence, things like that. If you have problems with the third chakra, which is in the solar plexus, you have problems like ulcers and stomach problems, indigestion. Heart chakra, obviously heart disease. Throat chakra, you have thyroid problems, you have problems in the neck, those kinds of things. In the third eye, which is over here, that chakra, you have problems with cognitive function. And with the crown chakra, which is here, if there's a problem there, then you have a problem with life. It's the basic, it's the what is called enlightenment deficiency. So, so the colors that are associated with the chakras, they're the colors of the spectrum, of the visible spectrum. So the meditation that is practiced is very simple. You just, before you do your primordial sound meditation or you do your breathing meditation, just for a few minutes, all you do is you sit quietly, put your attention on the chakra and visualize the corresponding color, which is to balance that chakra. And of course, if you want, then you can do the mantra sounds of the chakra. So the root chakra, the sound, David probably went over this with you. Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Ham, Ksham, and Om. As you're thinking the sound, the mantra, you're also visualizing the color. It's a very traditional, classic way of balancing the chakras. The next sensory experience is the experience of taste. Ayurveda recognizes 6 tastes, and these 6 tastes are sweet, sour, salt, bitter, pungent, astringent. Sweet, sour, salt, bitter, pungent, and astringent. All complex carbohydrates and anything that has a sweet taste or an aftertaste that's sweet, including fish, fowl, and meat, is sweet. Any complex carbohydrate, anything that has a sweet taste or an aftertaste, fruits that are sweet are in that category. Salt needs no explanation. Everybody knows what that tastes like. Sour, dominantly things like yogurt, cheese, salad dressings, these are all sour tastes. Vinegar. Bitter, all green leafy vegetables classified as bitter, but particularly some that are actually quite bitter, like some types of spinach, like fenugreek. There's an Indian plant called neem, which is extremely bitter. But generally, all green leafy, cabbage, spinach, fenugreek. Astringent, all beans and lentils and pulses, dal, is astringent. Tea is astringent. Coffee is astringent and bitter. Pungent, anything that has pungency or spice to it. So all spices, black pepper, red pepper, jalapenos, serrano, mustard, horseradish, ginger, garlic, pungent taste. So those are the 6 tastes. And each taste elicits a different physiological response in the body, which you will learn about in great detail tomorrow. The effect of taste, the after effect of taste, the virya, the vipak, the post-digestive effect. We'll go into great details tomorrow about the physiological response to taste and how you can use food as pharmacy. But for tonight, just remember 3 things. sweet, sour, and salt, that combination balances vata, slows down your metabolism. Bitter, pungent, and astringent balances kapha, speeds up your metabolism. Astringent, bitter, sweet balances pitta, reduces inflammation. And when we are talking about this, we are talking about physical body and subtle body, both. So it influences both the emotions as well as the physiological responses. Finally, let's talk for a few seconds about smell. The smell receptors that we have in our nose, in the back of our nose, are actually olfactory bulbs. They're neurons. They're direct extensions of our hypothalamus, which is linked to the limbic system. And the limbic system, as I mentioned to you yesterday, is the brain's brain. It controls autonomic responses. Autonomic responses are those things happening in the body for which we don't have any conscious control. So what are those things? Well, breathing is one. We don't consciously breathe all the time, although we can if we want to. The sleep-wake cycle is another. Body temperature regulation is another. Regulation of heart rate and blood pressure is another. So these are some of the very obvious things that are being taken care of by a part of our nervous system without our having to pay any attention to it. That's autonomic function. Now it so happens that autonomic function, memory, smell, and behavior are very intimately linked to each other. And there's some very interesting information about smell and pheromones. Pheromones are these very subtle hormones secreted in very small quantities by our body in response to our emotions, and they are secreted in our skin and in our breath and in our urine, in all our secretions, in our saliva. And these hormones correspond to different emotional states. And scientists who are working on these hormones, they are finding that every emotion has a pheromone and an odor associated with it. So when you say, I smell danger, you might be actually speaking the literal truth. There's a smell associated with that experience. And you know, this classic study that first came from Stanford, where they took mice and they would give them electrical shocks, and then they remove the mice from the room. Other mice are brought into the room. As soon as these other mice come into the room, they panic. They start releasing adrenaline and cortisol and all the stress hormones. And the explanation is they're breathing the hormones of fear left behind by the mice that were given the electrical shocks. So now when you say, I went into this room and I felt really tense, the reason is you're breathing the hormones of anxiety by the people who were there or who are there. So pheromones is a new area of study. But just remember that every emotion has a hormone associated and an odor. When somebody is angry, there's an odor associated with that anger. When somebody is sexually excited, there's an odor associated with that. When somebody is passionate about something, there's an odor associated. And there's part of our nose here, there's a thing called the vomeronasal gland that picks that up, even below the level of our conscious awareness. And that then, in fact, it's triggered by memory, or memory is triggered by smell. Bonding is through smell, between parent and child, between siblings. You know, in a big family, if you have lots of children, you'll find that if the siblings are bonded, then they can identify whose undershirt it is by smelling it. Because every undershirt has its own characteristic odor. You know, it's that person's personality. It's their whole complex being in that odor. Lovers know that, and people who are bonded know that. Mothers and children know that. Animals know that. They bond through that. So I think everyone also knows that a smell will trigger a very powerful physiological response as well as a powerful memory at the same time, and sometimes an urge to do something. And there's neuroassociative conditioning with that. And many years ago, what I had is over here, when I was in Lancaster, I had an interesting incident. There was a 4-year-old boy who actually came from a family in San Diego. And this boy had a condition called Wilms tumor, kidney cancer. And in his particular case, the Wilms tumor was responding to chemotherapy. The only problem was that every time he got his chemotherapy, he would go into dehydration. He'd had intense nausea and vomiting. And they'd take him to this chemotherapeutic unit here in San Diego at some hospital. All these doctors dressed in white uniforms with serious-looking expressions, the smell of antiseptic, and they give him his chemotherapy. They hold him there. He starts to vomit and starts to go into dehydration. So those days I used to be in Massachusetts, and they told me about this, and I invited them to bring the boy to Massachusetts. And I said, let's try something. And what I did was, I just had this boy surrounded by loving therapists, that nourishment, that nourishing energy. And then we introduced sensory modulation, music and games and colors and just total stimulation through the 5 senses. And while that was going on, you'd give him his little chemotherapy, he wouldn't even know it. And his tumor would start to shrink and no side effects, which is one thing, by the way, in cancer. Sensory modulation is great. If somebody is getting chemotherapy and they have to, and in many cases chemotherapy really helps, use sensory modulation. You can eliminate side effects. Eliminate. It's very interesting. A lot of side effects to chemotherapy are neuroassociative condition responses. Do you know that some patients will have a drop in their white count and their platelet count as they drive to their chemotherapy unit? Before they get the chemotherapy, their white count and their platelet count will drop because of the neuroassociative conditioning that they've had by going there. You can modify that through sensory modulation, which is what I did with this boy, 4 years of age. Well, one day, for some reason, that place where we used to play all these tricks with him and have fun, we couldn't do it, so we had to take him to a different part of the building, and we took him through an elevator. And as soon as we went through the elevator, he started having nausea, vomiting, he dehydrated. And we had no idea what had happened. And then we all got together and we realized that the smell in the elevator happened to have disinfectant, which was similar to the smell in the San Diego chemotherapeutic unit. All we had to do is change the smell, and again, he was fine. So that's how powerful neuroassociative conditioning is. Memories, behaviors, physiological responses. So smell therefore can be used to really create balance and to elicit physiological responses. I gave you one example of that through neuroassociated. You produce the sound, you at the same time have a certain smell associated with it. Okay, in conclusion, these are the smells that have different effects. In general, all floral and fruity essences are vata balancing. Anything that comes from a fruit or comes from a flower usually is vata balancing. In general, anything that has a cooling effect, obviously, is pitta balancing. Sandalwood, rose, mint, jasmine, these are cooling smells. And anything that is aromatic and spicy is stimulating, is kapha balancing. And as you learn more about the different diseases that are associated with the different doshas, then we'll be able to use smell in a very intelligent way through neuroassociative conditioning. So sensory modulation is never isolated. You combine all this to influence the pharmacy that's within.